Welcome to the Riding in the Weeds podcast, where we tackle life's inevitable challenges, from navigating mountain bike trails to overcoming business hurdles and forging deeper connections with pets and people. It's easy to find yourself tangled in the weeds, but we're here to help with insights and strategies that'll get you out of the weeds. Our goal is to boost your performance in both sports and everyday life by sharing essential skills that we've learnt along the way. Through tales of our entrepreneurship journey, thrilling biking adventures, and fostering meaningful relationships, your hosts, Natasha, Lockey, and Ginny, Branden, will guide you on a journey that's not only enjoyable, but also inspiring. Join us to gain confidence that you need to navigate the trails of life. Welcome to episode 46 of Riding in the Weeds with Ginny and Tash. Today we are here talking about all of the ways that we move away from discomfort. So we're talking about numbing, we're talking about behaviours that maybe aren't serving us, and we're going to dip our toes into the idea of addiction, but really what we're talking about is discomfort, numbing, and how when we get stuck riding in the weeds, it's easy to notice and redirect. So let's dig on in here. Ginny, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Tosh. How are you?
I'm doing great. We are managing some issues with internet today, so wish us luck. And know that we really are dedicated to you, our listeners, because we're going to make this work, regardless of the fact that I am halfway up the Baja and managing different location, different internet challenges.
We got this.
Perfect. Okay, so let's dig right on in here. Discomfort. What do we mean by that? What is discomfort?
I think in the broadest sense, it's any experience that makes us uncomfortable. I know that kind of is the word itself, but I think most of what our focus is for this topic is really about the things that cause us to reach for a reason to numb. So the sort of that constant stressor that isn't likely to go away quickly. So that can be the 9-to-5 job, that can be relationship struggles, that could be money worries, that could be challenges raising your kids, that could be building a farm out and trying to manage a not great environment with the weather. That could be having to travel across 2 countries to get to your location. It could be anything that sort of grinds on us over time that we can't just make go away easily. There's not a quick remedy to resolve the situation.
Yeah, I think of it as all of that and really that disconnecting that you want to do. So when something is stressing you out, as you said, and you're just wanting to disconnect, you get to the end of a day and everything's kind of worn you down, and the easiest thing to do is reach for a chocolate bar, have some sort of junk food, drink a glass of wine, go shopping at the mall, and included in there is going to the gym, obsessively needing to go for a run. It's really about your motivations behind the activity that you're doing. It's not necessarily the activity. And I think where things get really confused in our society is that we see some things as good and we see some things as bad. And I don't really think that it is as black and white as that. I think a lot of the time it is the reason and the motivation behind doing it. If you are somebody that at the end of a work day, before going home from work, needs to stop at the bar and have a beer in order to be able to manage the day you just had, that is quite a different situation to going on vacation to Mexico and having margaritas on the beach with your friend or your friends and having that fun time. So it's the energy behind whatever we're doing. I think I talked about in a previous episode when my husband was at the Paralympics and I was going to the gym because that was the only place I could find control. It wasn't necessarily that was a positive, like, yeah, the outcome's positive, but you can do a positive thing in a negative way and you will actually not get a positive result.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing to point out, because even having margaritas with your friends, if you have to have the margarita in order to hang out with your friends, there's the motivation question again. It's funny that we're talking about this today because I stumbled across a quote that I want to share that I happened across from someone that shared something from Bill Steinkraus, who's a horseman. And he said, "You can exaggerate every virtue into a defect." And I think that's so perfect for this, because even going to the gym, even eating healthy, if you do that to the extreme, it becomes a problem, and it can become an addiction rather than a tool that you are using to help your body be better. And I think that's where we want to spend our focus today, because neither one of us are therapists. We're not professional anythings when it comes to that, but this is a conversation that I think doesn't happen very often in a real down-to-earth kind of way. And it's not pointed out that those things that are, quote, healthy can be used in such a way that they no longer have that healthy impact. When you have to go to the gym in order to cope with your life, that's not necessarily the right motivation, and it's not going to get you the same results as if you're going because you want your body to feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting when you dig in and you start looking at your behaviors. I once put myself on an Audible Anonymous program because I had become so addicted to listening to fantasy books. And I said to myself, you know what? You want to listen to something? The only thing that you're allowed to listen to for the next month is anything that is going to move the needle forward in your life. So I could listen to books about self-development. I could listen to books that were going to teach me something. I could listen to podcasts. I just wasn't allowed to listen to fantasy books. Recently, I actually got to the point where I stopped listening to the self-development stuff because I had overrun that. And I had done that to the point where that actually had become toxic. And so then I dipped back into, you know what, I'm just going to take a chill pill and I'm going to listen to something a little more lighthearted. But when I find myself not being able to distance myself from listening to the book I'm listening to, and then I'm just like, no, I need the next one, because we know how well, if you're a fantasy person in any way, they just get you in and you don't want to stop. It's as bad as binging on a Netflix show. And that's fine, except for if you start looking at the amount of hours that you are spending doing that and you're wondering why things aren't working in other areas of your life, that is where you get to look. So it comes back to that whole, like, what are your goals? What are you wanting to do? And I was listening to a podcast this morning, and she was talking about looking at your social media scrolling and looking at what you're allowing into your frame of reference and into your scope. So your average American watches 3 to 4 hours of TV a day. Now, if you were to take half an hour to an hour, which is your average TV show, and sit down and watch one show a day and take the other 3 hours and go and do something else, like, how would that change your life? And the easiest way for you to make that switch is by asking yourself the question, what is this serving for me? Why am I sitting down and watching 3 to 4 hours of TV? Yes, you want to watch the next show because it hooks you in. However, why are we doing it?
Yeah. I have to laugh because as a child, I became a voracious reader. I loved to read. And as an adult, I pretty much don't read fiction. Because if I get into a fiction book, everything in my life stops. I cannot not read. And so I just don't read fiction anymore because it's compulsive. I can't help myself. But I still am a big reader and I still have tons and tons of books. Clearly, as there's one of 5 giant bookcases behind me in my house. What's interesting, though, is that when we get into these kind of situations, we're coping. That's what the addictions do for us, is it's a coping mechanism. And I think one of the first steps is to offer yourself some grace and some kindness that your body is subconsciously trying to handle everything that you've got going on. And that was the path of least resistance. And there needs to be some compassion for ourselves around that, because we are trying to deal with it. And I think that's also the hard thing about a lot of what's easily available in our culture. Social media is so readily available. Alcohol is so readily available. And it's also so normalized in our culture. Those things are also designed to hook you in. They're designed to keep you coming back for more because of the way they work on our bodies. And so that's why things like exercise and diet are not always as obvious as addictions, because they don't have that hook that exists in the other stuff. It's not as readily available, but it can be used the same way internally, psychologically for yourself. And if you have compassion for why you're doing that, that's like the first step you have to have in order to be able to make a change or to choose to do something different. You have to have the awareness that it's happening in the first place. Once you have that awareness, then you can begin to look at making different choices. Do I need to work on some emotional skills, some emotional intelligence skills to handle whatever it is that's coming at me? Do I need to go to therapy? Do I need to exercise more? Because legitimately not moving around can cause some of these problems. Do I need to choose different foods that will help my body feel better? The exact same things that can be sort of weaponized and keep us trapped in a place can also benefit us. But like you said, it's the motivation. That's really the key, is why am I reaching for these things?
Yeah, as you were talking, I could just feel this pendulum going backwards and forwards. So just going back to the book concept, there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking a Sunday afternoon, going and getting that book that everyone's told you is the best book out there and it's addictive, and trust me, you're going to read it cover to cover and you're going to need 4 hours out of your life because you're not going to want to put it down. So the problem we have in our lives is that that's wrong, right? We've made that to be not okay because it doesn't fit into the busy lifestyle that we have. So when everything stops and disappears, that's not acceptable. However, if you can create space, so maybe you want to be able to read a book every Sunday afternoon. So on Sunday, you take 3 hours and you schedule it off. That is your time to lose yourself in your hammock in a favorite book. And that's just what you do. And that's okay. And then the rest of the time, maybe you're reading other books that are not going to hook you in, and you know that you'll only read half an hour of them and then put it down because that's all you can absorb of it. We can actually create balance. And it's the same thing with exercise. And really, they say that 20 to 30 minutes is all the exercise you really need. After that, you should really be enjoying whatever it is that you're doing because it's not really giving you a lot of benefit. Now, that's not an across the board. If you're doing weight strengthening exercises, it'll take you an hour to an hour and a half to do 30 minutes of exercise because you need to take all those breaks in between. So being aware, obviously, know the rules, know how to break them, and understand the concepts behind things, right? So looking at when you are doing things within the benefits and when you are moving outside of them. There is nothing wrong with having some chocolate, but there's something wrong. Well, there's nothing, it's not right or wrong, but there is something going on when you need anything in order to maintain that balance within your mental well-being. When I would finish a day of mountain bike coaching and I'd had an amazing day, I'd just be like, oh, I really need a glass of wine. And I created a habit of going to the liquor store, picking up a bottle of wine, going home and drinking it. And one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go home. And when I get home, I'm going to do all the things I need to do. And then if I still want to have a glass of wine, I will jump in the car and I will drive down to the liquor store and I'll grab that bottle of wine. And whenever I did that, it was 50-50. Sometimes I'd go get it, sometimes I wouldn't. And I always enjoyed it so much more. Or I would call a friend, be like, hey, you want to catch up? Let's go and have a drink. And it was a completely different energy that I was doing it in. The same with the book, right? When I'm listening to my fantasy books, because I just don't want to think about all the things that are going on that I'm not coping with in my life, that is a completely different energy to, it's Sunday afternoon. That hammock looks really nice. I'm going to go and lie in that hammock for an hour and just decompress and let myself have some fun. And our society has just gotten everything so completely mixed up that we attach meaning to everything, yet we also numb away from things so quickly as well.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And it's unfortunate that the meaning that we often attach to things is so backwards sometimes. And we all, frankly, should probably take more Sunday afternoons and go spend relaxing in a hammock with a book, because we might feel a little better if we did take the downtime. If we did actually find a useful way to decompress that wasn't reaching for something to numb out necessarily, but was just simply decompressing. The biggest difference is the motivation behind it. Do you need it in order to feel better in a compulsive way that prevents you from allowing for flexibility and adaptability in your life? Yes, exercise is highly beneficial and helps you feel better when you do it, particularly if you have a 9-to-5 job where you're stuck at a computer or a desk all day. Yeah, movement is vital and key, and yes, you will feel better if you do it. But when it becomes compulsive, that's when the line starts getting drawn in the sand, that like, okay, maybe this behavior is not as useful or as helpful and is actually helping me avoid something else or avoid feeling something else. And it's hard. We have all got major stressors. We've both been really candid about stuff that's gone on in our lives that is super stressful. And you have to find a way to manage that. And that's where reaching for more tools in your toolbox, emotional intelligence skills, different body work, all sorts of stuff like that becomes vital to managing your life until something becomes compulsive. And then that's when the red flag should go up and you need to go, oh, hang on a second. I think I need to check on this and figure out, why am I really doing this? What is this accomplishing for me? And is it just avoiding something else? Because if that's the answer that comes up, then probably a good time to decide maybe you should find something else to explore instead.
Yeah, 100%. What you were saying really reminded me about exercise and HIIT workouts, mountain biking. When I was managing the stresses I had in September, I broke my wrist. And so normally what I would do would be do my high intensity workouts. I couldn't do them. Go for a bike ride. Couldn't do that. And I was left with hiking. So I was still needing to get out. I was still needing to take the puppy out to get some exercise. I still had legs. They were working just fine. But I really did notice that hiking and walking was so putting me into a place where I had to consider what was going on. And I could either do it, again, talking about like why I want to go outside without my phone. Well, if I just then plug myself into my phone and listen to something, I'm disconnecting from that space that I'd actually been given to go for a walk and really just process. And again, it comes back to just balance and awareness. And it's okay to do everything in moderation. And a lot of the time we think it's hard to stop doing something. Yet, when you actually break it down, how hard is it for me really to not pick up that chocolate bar, open the wrapper, and put it in my mouth? Probably not that hard. It's hard for me to have the self-control to not eat chocolate. But when you break it down, really, where does that self-control come from? That's just an example for everything. Is it really that hard to not plug my headphones in or leave my phone behind or do whatever it is? It isn't. The hard is not having the thing that I'm using to avoid. But again, if it's actually because that's the experience that you want to have.
Yeah. I have to laugh a little bit because addictions, things that we become addicted to, become very easy to reach for. Grabbing the chocolate bar is not difficult. It's an easy thing. And the things that we often become addicted to are that simple, whereas doing the thing that is better for us is harder. Sitting with the emotions is harder. Managing the stress levels and finding new tools when you realize that you aren't coping very well is harder. And especially when you start throwing judgment in there, or guilt or shame or any other of those emotions on top of that pile, that only makes it more difficult to reach for those things that are better for us. But without the awareness that what you're doing is not really benefiting you, it becomes almost impossible to make that shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the note, and this is sort of blending into the next episode and rounding up this one, is that when you decide to do anything, when you choose to take a different path, being able to hold on to it lightly and really think about where your expectations are at is the key to really moving forward. Because when you get all wrapped up in switching from one behavior to another, we come back to that, you know, you're doing your diet and you step off the diet, it's like you've gotten a flat tire. Realize that you've gotten a flat tire. You're trying to communicate better with your spouse and you just had a massive blowout. That doesn't mean you need to go and break up. It means that there's some stuff that you need to stop. You need to reflect. We need to look at our expectations and we need to start over. We don't need to go and slash all 4 tires just because one of them is flat. When I found out that I really couldn't do gluten and my body didn't like it, I'd been sick for a very long time, and I finally figured out what the problem was. And I quit it. And this was back when gluten wasn't a thing that anyone was quitting. There was very little food for me to eat. And the first week, the changes that I noticed in my body were unbelievable. I could think, I felt better, I wasn't nauseous the whole time. It was an incredible change. And then I went over to my now mother-in-law's house, and she makes the most amazing cookies. And so I had some. And I felt so guilty. I went home and I was like, you know what? This is ridiculous. If I think I can do this, this is stupid. And I gave up. And I went back to eating gluten because I couldn't resist a cookie. And after probably almost a month of going back to feeling awful, I was like, okay, this is not working either. So what am I going to do about this? So I made up in my head, and I told myself that sugar and gluten canceled each other out. And so having a cookie was actually fine. That wasn't going to hurt me. But I didn't want to eat bread, and I didn't want to eat spaghetti, and I didn't want to have all of these other things. But eating a cake or a cookie or something, a treat that had sugar in it, was going to be just fine. And I swear to you, what's funny is I still hold that true to this day. And it shows you the power of the mind. And yes, if I had too many cookies, I would feel sick. Most people would. However, eating very glutinous things will make me feel unwell. But what it did was it gave me permission to let one tire get a little bit flat. And then I'd just pump that tire back up and I'd keep driving. Because without that, I just kept giving up because the guilt, I can't do this, I can't do this. And it's allowed me to stay on that path for the last 25 years of my life, was just deciding that sugar and gluten cancel themselves out. Just as a fact, it's not true. My friend actually went to her naturopath and told her that as a fact that had come from me. And her naturopath was like, what are you talking about? So just to be very clear, it's not the truth. However, that is how I moved into giving up gluten in my diet and not being in that guilt and that shame and just allowing a little bit of grace.
I mean, it worked. So But
totally
I think what
works.
you're really doing there is you're giving yourself grace around the fact that, okay, right now, I still want to eat cookies. And as long as you're not eating 50 cookies, it probably didn't have as big of an impact on your body as bread would or pasta or something like that. So you were able to find a way that helped give you a little bit of what you needed and still stick mostly with what your body wanted. And now I'm sure cookies are not as quite of a big of an allure as they used to be, and you've adapted. I think it's just all in the motivation. Like you said, don't slash the other 3 tires because one's flat. That's not helpful. And if you find yourself compulsively having to reach for something, then you need to question what's going on in the bigger picture. What are you avoiding feeling? And or what is that action serving for you? What is it giving you that is potentially keeping you trapped or stuck in the weeds of some sort of a situation or a feeling? So you've got to be able to be introspective. We've talked about this a lot. This is not the first time this has come up, but you have to be able to be introspective and really explore why you're doing the things you're doing. And then you can move forward.
Yeah, I think that's really the key and the main topic of this podcast is we get stuck riding in the weeds when we don't stop and think. When it comes to mountain biking, if you're struggling and getting frustrated and getting angry and not enjoying the ride, there is a trigger going on. It is why I think a mountain bike is your best therapist, because you are being triggered. Because let's be honest, the reason you bought a bike was because you have that vision of your hair in the wind, the freedom, the joy, the fun. And if that's not happening for you, then there's something else going wrong, and that's inside of you. You and your pet, it's the same thing. We get dogs, we get cats, we get these animals to join us in our lives because we have this vision of having fun and having a companion. We have relationships with other people because we want to be challenged and we want to have these friendships that grow us. And so when something is toxic in any form, that's really, it's on us. And it's about taking that step back and going, hold on a minute, I've taken something that should be fun, that is a joyful experience. Any activity, at the end of the day, should, I'm using the should word, but it's there for fun. Going out for drinks with your friends, that's fun, right? Going to the gym, looking good, feeling good, all of the stuff, eating chocolate, it's all supposed to be fun. And if at some point it is no longer bringing you joy, I think that's when we want to go, hey, stop the bus, hold on a second. This is supposed to be a friend, not a foe. How do I switch this relationship and bring it back to where it's supposed to be?
Yeah. I'll even throw in there, if you need the thing in order to have fun, then you may want to ask the same questions. And the last little bit I think I want to talk about is that there have been a lot of studies with animals about compulsive behaviors and neurosis that happen when animals are not kept in situations that are very nice for them. There was a whole series of studies done in the 70s called Rat Park. You can go Google it. There's tons of information out there. That was looking at addiction in rats. The whole argument about drugs when being so addicting was that if drugs were available, then people were going to get addicted. That was based on experiments with rats who were put in a plain little cage, and they were offered plain water and then water that was laced with addictive drugs. And of course, the rats chose the drugged water, but they were in a bare cage with nothing else. The problem is rats are social creatures, just like people are. And so some other researchers came along and they were like, well, this isn't really accurate as to how rats function. So they created what they called Rat Park, which was like rat paradise. It had tunnels and it had lots of room for socialization with lots of rats. And there were all sorts of interesting things to do. Like everything a rat would love was included in this scenario, as well as offering regular water and drugged water. And what they found was that the addiction numbers went down into the single digits percentages. The number of rats that were addicted to the laced water was virtually none at that point because they had all of their needs met. And what this really shows to me is that when we meet our needs, we don't need the addictive behavior. And so it becomes a question of how can we meet our needs? And the next layer of those experiments that started happening was they started looking at the psychological effects of the animals who had neurosis in those types of cages and situations where they did not have their access to their natural environment. So that includes behaviors like pacing or weaving and repetitive motion behaviors that animals have. We've all remember videos of lions just walking back and forth in really small enclosures in zoos many years ago before they learned about all this stuff. And what they found was those behaviors were actually helping the animal physiologically cope. So the animals that chose those behaviors actually had better physiological numbers than the ones who didn't. And so that's why compassion is so important when we're talking about addiction for ourselves, because our bodies are trying to manage the situation. So when we become addicted to something, it is serving a need and it is helping us to work through a situation, stress, whatever it is. But the real answer is we need more tools. We need more options. We need better ways to support ourselves. And when we can find that, that's when we can start to thrive again. And so you have to be able to ask those hard questions, and you've got to be able to put up with the discomfort of sitting through whatever it is you're working on, whether you're avoiding something or whether you just don't have enough tools to actually manage the level of stresses in your environment, whatever it is. You just need to go find more tools. There's tons and tons of resources out there online. There's lots and lots of stuff available to everyone now. That is the blessing of the technology that we have, despite the fact that it can be addictive. So asking those hard questions is a must if you're going to figure out a way to work through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great note to finish up on. Look after ourselves. Pay attention. Be aware. We all get stuck riding in the weeds, and we have so many tools available to us to move through and move past, but we can only access them when we're aware of what's going on. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave them on whatever platform you are watching us on, listening to us on. We really, really appreciate likes, shares, reviews. If there's somebody who you think this can help, please share it out to them. And we really appreciate that you're here with us. Found out recently that most podcasts actually don't make it past 3 recordings. And the next level is 20 recordings. And 3% of podcasts make it past that. And we are at episode 46 right now. And I think that's in our 2nd season. I'm not sure how the numbers actually work. Ginny's the one who's the number girl.
That's total.
That's total. So we're at 46 episodes. So we are well past double where most people stop. And that is because of you, our listeners. And so sending you all the love in the world. Thanking you so much for being here with us. And if there's anything that you'd love us to talk about, if you have any comments, please let us know. I'm Natasha Lockey. I am a performance mountain bike and life coach. I am here to help you improve your skills on your mountain bike so that you build confidence, have more fun, and the same thing in your life. Let's improve your skills so that you can have more joy and do more of the things that you love to do every day. You can find me at Betty Go Hard on Instagram, on Facebook and LinkedIn as Natasha Lockey. You can also find our podcast, Riding in the Weeds, at www, as we say in New Zealand, www.ridingintheweeds.com. We are on Instagram at Riding in the Weeds, and we also have a Facebook page, Riding in the Weeds. How about you, Ginny?
Yeah, I'm Ginny Branden. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. And I can help you if you are struggling with your pet relationships. So whether that's a behavioral challenge, emotional challenge, or just working through life stresses, I am going to be able to help connect with your pet and get both of you back on the same page together so that you can have more fun and harmony in your life. You can find me at soulpetconnections.com or on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube under the same handle. So just to echo Tosh, we absolutely love having you along for the ride with us, and we are sending you all so much love and looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone. Have an amazing day.